Right now, let's get to this newly released video that's raising fresh questions about the government of Saudi Arabia's role in the terrorist attacks carried out on September 11th of 2001. Now, relatives of the victims say the video, you're looking at it here, which was recorded in 1999, shows a man who was known to the FBI as a Saudi intelligence operative, and it shows him canvassing key landmarks in Washington. That includes the United States Capitol. So taking a look at all of that before the attacks. That same official that was seen on the video later was seen with the 9/11 hijackers in the weeks before the attacks. So for further context on this, you remember what these families have gone through. They've been fighting to hold the Saudi government accountable for playing a role in 9/11 for years and years, arguing they were complicit, or at the very least they knew about the attacks before they happened. The Saudi government all along has been denying any role. The U.S. government all along has been claiming that al-Qaeda acted alone. So that is the background on that. Let's bring in Terry Strada on this. Terry's the national chair of 9/11 Families United. Her husband, Tom, was killed on that day. He was a partner at Cantor Fitzgerald, the firm on the 104th floor of the North Tower in New York. Terry, you see this video. This guy's going around. Seems like he's kind of casing the Capitol and what have you. What does that add to this conversation you've been having for 20 plus years?
It's exactly that he is casing the U.S. Capitol. He scans over the entrances, the exits, the security guards. He goes inside the Capitol. He's talking about a plan. That's why he's filming all of this. So it's very disturbing, and it adds another very large brick to a very large wall of evidence that we have against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for murdering nearly 3,000 Americans.
You would argue, I'm sure, that you've had that evidence building for years and years, and that it hasn't necessarily led to any accountability. What about now?
I hope that, yes, that this is going to change some people's minds, you know, in the administration, in the State Department, the people that are blocking our ability to hold the kingdom accountable, because they are partaking in keeping the evidence buried. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more, but it's all under a protective order by the judge. And the DOJ is presently siding with the Saudis to keep all of this evidence secret, away from the American people and hidden away from the 9/11 families.
Yeah, this took so long itself to come out. But to your point, there's more, right? I mean, this took years and years for us to see it publicly, even though the authorities had access to it. I mean, it was shortly thereafter, I think, that they searched this guy's apartment and found this video.
Oh, yes, they've had it for 20 years, and they've kept it buried and away from the families and away from the American people, just like all of the other evidence that they are continuing to keep under a protective order. The kingdom has a very strong influence on our Department of Justice, and they cower to the Saudis, and they partake in this abuse of power and are trying to keep all of this evidence a secret. It's a travesty of justice.
Do you have allies in Washington and Congress maybe that could work on this? I know there was that bill that was introduced last year. I mean, years and years later, you've done so much work to try to make progress for the victims and the victims' families in some way, shape, or form. That was the Ensuring Justice for Victims Act in the most recent Congress. What about that, and what about maybe what this adds to that effort now?
Right. So that piece of legislation is currently sitting in our judiciary committees, and I am pressuring the chairman of both committees in both chambers to bring it up for a vote. And I've got 9/11 families behind me asking for the same thing. We don't understand why they're delaying it. Because we're trying to do a peace deal in the Middle East, or this defense pact with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is not a reason to bury the evidence. It's not a reason to keep the truth from coming out, and it's not a reason to let the kingdom get away with murder. All we want to do is present this evidence into a courtroom and have our case based on the merits, not on a dismissal, which is what the kingdom wants, rather than, you know, come into a courtroom and argue your side. Why are you so innocent? How can you even say that this video is not exactly what it is, which is casing the U.S. Capitol? So they were coming to kill our lawmakers, and I'm calling on them to stand with us and enact the Ensuring Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act as soon as possible.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.